Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, Brian McWilliams, where we're going to be making some jokes, laughing out at broken world, but also laying out some philosophy for the future, how we can fix this mess we're in and have a great time doing it all with a Mean Age Daydream. Welcome, everybody, to Mean Age Daydream. I'm, of course, your bald and beautiful host, Brian McWilliams, here on a live streaming Tuesday afternoon. Of course, if you're listening, if you're just getting the pod version, of course, you'll get this on Wednesday. And I thank you all for that. Please do like, subscribe, comment if you'd be so kind. Every little bit helps, guys, especially when, of course, as you know, we are so very shadow banned on YouTube, but that's all right. Screw those people. And don't forget, if you're a member of the Patreon Pride or the Locals group, we just launched a new members-only Telegram discussion group because basically Facebook has killed off our opportunity to even stream to it anymore, so we're pivoting away from that. Welcome to that group, those of you that are in the Pride. Please join, support us. As little as $5 a day, guys. That's all we ask. All right, so let's hop into it. A few things to discuss today. I talked about the Who, right? I got a multiple Who's here. Doctor Who, for those of you that are Doctor Who fans, I was a Doctor Who fan. I want to talk a little bit about that. And maybe I'll kick that off to start the show. Then we'll go into the Who Treaty, the pandemic treaty, which is, thank God, being rejected by nations. And then we'll talk a little bit about some other items on the docket. Canada and this Orwellian cause no harm bill that's up there. And also this portal. There's a portal in New York City. It's not a real portal. It's a booby portal. I guess it's a booby and wanking portal is what it's basically boiled down to at this point. They had to shut it down. We'll get into that briefly. And then we'll wrap it all up by talking about one of the most insulting things I've ever heard in my life, which is in regards to the Olympics. No, it's not about the Olympics being a giant waste of money and a suck on every citizen in those cities to pay off the IOC and corporate sponsors, but is in regards to special beds that don't allow you to FUCK. I'm going to try not to curse early because I heard it screws up your algorithm. So that's the rundown, guys. Let's get into it, shall we? First things first, Doctor Who. Doctor Who has been bought out as many a famed TV show, movie, franchise, beloved series has been by Disney. Now, Disney is working now hand in hand with the BBC, two clawed appendages of the corporate machine, the censorship complex, the quote-unquote message senders. And if you don't know what I mean by the message, go ahead and Google that. But essentially, everything that is woke and woeful in this world can fall under the quote-unquote message, which encompasses LGBTQIF2J, climate change, making you feel bad for white privilege, attacking capitalism. All that falls under the message. So Disney's now working hand in hand with Doctor Who and its showrunner, Russell T Davies. Now, Russell T Davies had come on board and had been given credit for, quote-unquote, saving Doctor Who at one point in time. This was back in 2005. He had a great run. I'll say I became a Doctor Who fan in that time. I wasn't too adept at watching the older shows. I knew of it because Doctor Who is so large in culture, especially if you like sci-fi, which I do. But he brought it back and had some good series. So the show hit the doldrums, went into the shits, and then they bring him back. And people are like, oh, yay, that's wonderful. Now, part of the reason why the show went sideways was because they introduced a female Doctor Who. Now, Doctor Who had always been a man. They brought in a new female Doctor Who, which annoyed people. It annoyed me, frankly. Not to say there's anything intrinsically wrong with it, but it smacked of, we're doing this just because we feel we should, not because it makes any real legitimate sense in the context of the show. And I don't give a crap what excuse they made. The Doctor is a quote-unquote Time Lord. He is a male Time Lord, and I presume men and female Time Lords needed to interbreed in order to create more Time Lords. Of course, I'm not going to bore you with the entire background of the show here. It just didn't make a lot of sense for him to suddenly regenerate as a chick. So people didn't get along with it. They didn't like the show. The writing was bad. I gave it a shot. I watched a couple episodes. Wasn't a fan of the actress. Wasn't a fan of this plot. So I tuned out, as did most people. The ratings for this show really dropped precipitously. So they tried to bring back this guy, Russell T Davies. He introduces a brand new litany of episodes that are even more woke, including a Christmas episode, which aired to the all-time lows for a Doctor Who Christmas episode, which is something the Brits all gather around their Christmas trees and suck tea through their multi-pronged teeth and go, "Isn't it nice?" So they bring him back, all-time lows. Same time this year, they introduced a new Doctor who is a very gay black man, black actor. They bring him back on board, or I say they bring him in for the first time. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with having a Doctor Who that is black nor gay. In fact, I'd be all for it. The thing is, and this is what bugged me about it when watching this premiere episode, right? Because it just rolled out on May 10th for Disney Plus. It does seem that in the build-up to all this, the message was what was leading the way. For example, in the Christmas episode, you meet his very trans, quote-unquote, daughter. And, you meet all these different bits and pieces of the message that are being shoehorned into this. And at the same time, and this is similar to what happened with Little Red Riding Hood, the Snow White movie from Disney, where they delayed this thing, I think, a year because the lead actress was doing interviews that were so obnoxious, so aggressive, so woke as shit that it pissed everybody off. She literally would tell people that she essentially hated you. Like, if you're a straight white person, she hates you. That was it. If you're a man, she hates you. The problem with this Doctor Who is I'm watching the first episode. And I don't think the guy's doing a bad job. Doctor Who's always been a very boisterous character. It's the way he's written. And I guess she. Bleh. So at the same time, this Doctor Who is dealing with a scenario where he's going through space and time, always solving problems. A very depressing, if I'm being perfectly honest, set of circumstances addresses the world the viewers welcomed into. Doctor Who is from a planet which has been genocided. He's the last of his kind, depressing existence, right? Going and solving all these other crises that are happening. But at the same time, upbeat, funny, very jovial, puts a good spin on it. So the actor does a good job with that, this new actor they have playing Doctor Who. And I didn't find anything really wrong with his performance in what I watched, which is this episode called Space Babies, right? This is the new real episode, not the Christmas one. I had to turn it off halfway through though, because frankly, when it got to babies talking, like Look Who's Talking, the movie with John Travolta back in the day, the whole episode is these stupid babies talking and being adorable and going around in widow's throws, and it just pissed the fucking shit out of me. I can't take it. So I had to turn it off. But the problem isn't so much in the performance of this Doctor from what I saw. The problem is, as I mentioned, everything leading into the debut of this new Doctor Who. Him doing interviews, and I apologize, let me look up the name of this guy really quick because I forget what it is. I looked it up and then I immediately forgot it because that's how my brain works with two young children. And, those of you that have children, the dad brain is very, very real. His name is Ncuti Gatwa. Ncuti. Ncuti? I don't know. Ncuti for you, Ncuti for me, Ncuti for everybody. So Ncuti Gatwa is the name of this actor. He did all these interviews where he essentially, just like the chick who played Snow White, just is like, I want to make it as gay as possible. I want to shove this gayness in people's face. I want to be twerking in the episode. And you go, okay, this makes me want to not like it. And this, I've said this before, this comes from a man who literally has written into legal documents that my children will go to my gay cousin and his husband. I love the gays. There's ain't nothing wrong with it. I have no objections to people being gay and being flamboyantly gay for that matter. The problem is when you seek out to piss people off, and when they go, I don't know, this seems like they're just doing this to be woke. It seems shitty. Why is Doctor Who acting this way? Why are you guys making this whole thing? And Russell T Davies is doing interviews where he's saying, I want to make Doctor Who queer as shit. What do you think's going to happen? What do you think the reaction's going to be? And instead of saying, you know what, maybe we should take a step back. Maybe we shouldn't push this so hard. Maybe we shouldn't be just smashing people in the face with it. And I've told you before, as a writer, the most effective way you're going to get a point across is not by smashing people in the face with it over and over and then telling them that they're fucking idiots for not liking it. That doesn't go over well with anybody. It's like inflation and the US government, right? First, they tell us it's not happening, just like with all the woke messaging. First, they tell you it's not happening. Then they tell you, well, it's happening, but it's not as bad as you think. Then they tell you it's your fault because you deserve it, right? And that's where we are with woke culture right now. We deserve it because we're such assholes. So that's what they're tripling down on. And that's what, I'm telling you for a fact, that's what the problem is here. Too aggressive, too much woke messaging, too much fuck you, you're the problem here, not us, and not enough, hey, maybe we should pump the brakes. I mean, the same thing applies in a way to the Libertarian Party. What I try with the Libertarian messaging, you know, what I'm working on doing with it is more accessible, less punches in the face. You need a good punch in the face now and then, and that works, and that appeals to our base heavily. But I'll tell you what, you need to have something that allows people to go, you know what? Yeah. You know what? This sounds good. I like that. That sounds like a future I can get behind rather than, hey, moron, you're the problem. It's not effective messaging. So anyway, that's my Doctor Who rant for those of you that have watched it or give a shit. Let's go on to the pandemic treaty. So the World Health Organization, which I will remind you is something like 80% plus backed by Bill Gates and Bill and Melinda Gates, their foundations, their charities in one way, shape, or form. The World Health Organization, right? 80% backed for charitable donations by them. The pandemic treaty was put together by the WHO after COVID. Now, the audacity of these people to think that world governments, especially those that had essentially followed WHO protocol, right? And Dr. Fauci says, well, I followed the CDC's recommendations. And the CDC goes, well, we followed the World Health Organization's recommendations. And the World Health Organization goes, we made all that shit up. And then we lied about it. Yeah, we didn't know any of that crap. Yeah, the whole 6-foot thing is garbage. The vaccines, yeah, they're not effective. They don't work. All the transmission things we told you about, yeah, that was crap. You know, you're washing your groceries and that kind of stuff. Yeah, you don't need to do any of that stuff. And we're also going to continuously lie to your face about the adverse effects. So, and shut down your economies. That worked really well. So after all of these people have been exposed as the censoring totalitarians that they were, they decide it's a good idea to put together a World Health Organization pandemic treaty and to get all of the world's nations to sign on to this treaty. Now, this treaty, as it was originally written, would have given the World Health Organization essentially autonomous power to shut down, just like during COVID, shut down entire economies, shut down borders, demand people get the vaccines up to date. It was all in the slipstream of an unelected bureaucracy, which, as I mentioned, heavily funded from external sources. So they were essentially given themselves permission to control how individual nations handled pandemics. Like if you sign on to this, that was it. You're committed. You're going to do what they said. And coming out of the biggest fuck all, everybody here should be fired, if not strung up, illustration of overabundance of government authority run amok that was the COVID pandemic. I'll say pandemic in quotes because I don't believe it was a pandemic. Well, shockingly, a lot of nations are saying, I don't know if we want to do that. I don't know if we want to go in on this. So it got slapped down. Now, you did have, to their credit, some U.S. lawmakers, I say some, should be all, but we know the Democrats will never give up on their COVID fixation. And apparently neither will Donald Trump, who's still out there talking about how he had proudly been involved with the vaccines. So despite the fact that nations stood up and said, we don't know about this. To the World Health Organization, they go, okay, we'll tone it down a little bit. They release a new version, essentially toned down slightly, but still giving them autonomy over sovereign nations to control their economies, to control their borders, as I just mentioned. A lot of aspects which are bullshit. Well, the United Kingdom stepped up and said, why don't you go fuck yourself? Now, Slovenia, I'm sorry, was it Slovenia or Slovakia? Let me check real quick, guys. I know these Slovaks will come after me. And you do not want to be on the wrong side of a Slovak, I'll tell you that much. Even at the Olympics, you don't want to be on the wrong side of a Slovak and the sex beds that don't work. So hold on, let me just scroll up here real quick. Where the country's pandemic treaty? God damn it. Slovakia. There we go. Slovakia. So Slovakia is the latest to reject this pandemic treaty. Why? Number one reason, it impacts the sovereignty of their nation. Yes, it does. The fact that the Joe Biden, dementia-riddled Joe Biden, who we know is obviously, despite all his rhetoric about reining in pharmaceutical and fighting Big Pharma, is at the beck and call of Big Pharma. That was illustrated throughout the vaccine rollout. The fact that Joe Biden in the United States is even remotely involved in this is insulting to every single citizen of this nation. I mean, for fuck's sake, Brexit, they'll tell you a million things about Brexit and the UK leaving that entire European Union scenario, but at the core of it was the fact that Britons didn't want to be ruled by an autonomous bureaucracy of unelected officials that resides in Brussels, dictating what they could do with their borders, their immigration policies, their economic policies, and all these other things. What they can farm, what fertilizers they can use. Now, you've seen how that's working out for a lot of other nations out there. You're seeing the farmers' protests that are going on because of some of the more idiotic things the European Union has put into play here. So for the UK to stand up and say, nope, makes a lot of sense. Why haven't we? Why hasn't Australia? Concentration camp Australia, where they legitimately had camps where they would ship people off and put them in there during COVID because they didn't have a vaccine or because they were exposed to COVID. Off you go. Off you go to the resort. This pandemic treaty is one of the greatest assaults on sovereignty, on individual rights, on nations' rights that has ever existed. It remains to be seen if it gets signed off, but I think this is an indicator that it's being pretty much exposed for what it is. This is the push for global world order, right? This is the Soros model of governance with one centralized government that controls everything everybody does. And if not one centralized government, well, then the dichotomy of we have over here, kind of like in Orwell's novel, which we'll talk about again once we get around to Trudeau. But the world is forming into two blocks. You've got the Europeans over here, you've got NATO, essentially one side, and then over here you've got the BRIC. And the World Health Organization seems, for some odd reason, to be the one thing uniting both of these massive blocks of power and is the most totalitarian of all of them. Funny how that works out, isn't it? It's a feature, not a bug. Okay, so that's the World Health Organization. Let's talk a little bit more now about... Sorry, I'm a little thirsty here. Let's pivot, and this is going to be a little bit of a quicker episode. A lot going on. As you know, there is a libertarian convention upcoming. I've got like 150 different media now coming to this thing. Oh, that's right. So we have to talk about why this World Pandemic Treaty is so prominent right now and why this is so important to get slapped down. If you haven't noticed, the bird flu's back. The bird flu, like a bird, flying south for the winter, then coming back up here to fuck everybody. Well, now the bird flu is back front and center as the next thing to scare the population into subservience and cowering and fear. Experts, quote unquote experts, say the bird flu is becoming supercharged. Yes. Yeah, the bird flu, according to The Guardian, is constantly evolving. And it's clear a couple of years ago, the current strain of bird flu changed to become supercharged. Now it seems to be fairly widespread in the cow population. Okay, so remember, cows do eat birds, and a lot of farmers do put chicken in their cow feed. I know it's gross, but it happens. Now the cow population in the U.S. has got it. That's a more direct route where it can transmit to people and gain the adaptations it needs to go pandemic. So, of course, what's the solution to this? Oh, that mRNA technology that's now seemingly every day being exposed. I mean, John Odermatt just had Dr. Peter McCullough on his show from the Wellness Company, who's now who he's working with, talking about the spike protein, all the damage it's doing, talking about these blood clots, these massive blood clots, talking about supercharged cancers that seem to be. Now, I will say this. I was talking to an oncologist recently I talked to him about this Japanese doctor who had basically come out, Japan's leading doctor in regards to cancer, and said, look, we're seeing these super cancers come out, right? Essentially, cancer typically takes like 5 years, and to grow, but these things are just popping up in like a year, and they're massive, and they're at this point almost inoperable. So an oncologist I talked to, who was, I guess, libertarian leaning. This is at the pool in Vegas where I have all your oncology conversations. He had said he had not seen the super cancers to that extent. He said, I haven't really seen it, to be honest. I said, okay, fine. And we're talking about the failures of the medical community when it came to COVID. So I believe his authentic take there. But at the same time, you're seeing other people talk about it often. Super cancers. You're talking about just people having quote unquote long COVID, which is just, like Chris Cuomo, who's now taking ivermectin for long COVID. But these are probably side effects from the vaccine that are playing out with increased stresses on your heart, like myocarditis, pericarditis. Myocarditis for sure has been confirmed. You're seeing more and more of it, Bell's palsy, etc. So, of course, the solution to this bird flu, why wouldn't it be mRNA, right? So mRNA, which proves so invaluable in generating the vaccines, could once again be a vital tool. Current trials by Moderna, GlaxoSmithKline, and CureVac are working in collaboration and testing the H5N1 vaccines in people. Guys, it's never going to stop. They will never allow it to stop. There's too much money. There's too much control. Many people have said that COVID was essentially a test run for control. How much would people take? How much will they accept in their lives? How much inconvenience? How much collateral damage to education, to children, to business, to your way of life and living will you accept? Maybe the test isn't over. Or, as I've said before, typically when you have failing empires, and look, it could be very, very, very well argued that the United States is a failing empire, that the the European Union is a failed empire, that all the states under the banner are failed empires. Essentially, any state that is taking part in our global monetary system and fiat currency and fractional reserve banking and Federal Reserve banking, right? All of these things, all of these created money systems that are moving money around from here to there and everywhere, essentially reallocating money to different places that need it, from rich countries to poor countries. All of these are attacks on sovereignty, and all these are indicators, by the way. A massively inflated currency untethered to anything is a clear indicator your empire is going to be failing. If you look at Rome and virtually any other major civilized empire, they all relate to a failed currency, an over-indexing of their military, and then collapse. I would say that this isn't just one nation, but as I mentioned, we're talking about virtually a global collapse of the empire of banking. So what happens when empires start to fail? Just as you're seeing here with censorship, with crackdowns on quote-unquote extremism, well, empires tend to get more close-fisted. They tend to get more aggressive and authoritarian. You're seeing that play out in China. I've talked this numerous times before. We're seeing that here in this pandemic treaty, these bullshit, everybody's going to die from this next virus. These are all exercises in control. And I do believe that at least one component of the COVID response was to test just where we're at. If not, these people are stupid, to be honest. I mean, I almost can't blame them because the writing's on the wall as far as where things are headed. I mean, it has to take a sharp turn. It has to take a sharp correction, or we're never going to get out of this hole. And it might be too late already. But I guess we'll see. Okay, moving on. Next thing, let's pivot over. Let's have a little fun here and talk about the portal in New York City. Let me Google the name of the artist. New York City portal artist. So there is a portal. It's a New York to Dublin portal that is in, I'm not sure what part of New York City, probably, downtown Manhattan or something like that. So live streaming public art known as the portal. Of course, why would they tell me who? Okay, it's Benedictus. God, any of these people have normal names? Benedictus Gilius, Gyllys, Gilius. So anyway, he's from Lithuania, and he thought this all up, which makes me think that really the long game is exactly what this thing's getting closed down for. But they installed this thing called the portal on May 8th. It's in New York City. It's in the Flatiron Building and a companion screen in Dublin, Ireland's main thoroughfare on O'Connell Street. And of course, what's been happening? People have been going up there. There's one video online of a chick lifting her shirt and flashing her big knockers, shaking them around for everybody's enjoyment. There's another guy just jerking off in front of the portal, as you do. I mean, what did you think was going to happen? What if you have a live stream in the middle of a city to another city and people watching? What do you think is going to happen? And yes, some of this is going to be OnlyFans models getting free publicity. Yeah, that's going to be some of it. Some of it's just going to be weirdos who jerk off on subway cars, figuring out that there's now a perfect place for them to do this above ground. And I would argue, as I said, a Lithuanian artist here, I'm sure he has a feed in between these things going to his house. I'm not saying he did explicitly to see who's going to flash him or splash cum on the sidewalk, but I certainly think it's a component of it, right? I mean, if you're talking about a public live stream in the middle of a city, there's a public art installation. That's part of the fun, isn't it? If you're going to shut it down every time somebody whips a nipple out or flashes a clit at you, you're not going to have much of an exhibit because then it's boring. I can see people waving at me on the phone if I call my parents. If I want to see nice videos of people waving and being like, hello, hello, which is all most of this is anyway. You're waiting for the dick to pop out. You're waiting for the nip to slip. You're waiting for something crazy to happen. That's what it's there for. That's the beauty of a live, quote unquote, portal between two spaces, is that you're interacting in real time and there's not a safety net there. If you're going to eliminate it, every time, as I said, your sidewalk gets a little bit dirty with human reproductive matter, then why the fuck do it in the first place? Why do it in the first place? Stupid. Fucking stupid. All right. Moving on, let's talk about Trudeau, the most evil man. I mean, and again, Justin Trudeau, who has been fathered in by, well, I mean, in theory, Fidel Castro, but has been fathered in to the entire World Economic Forum system. Of course, he is one of the acolytes of the WEF. But this new psychotic bill in Canada is, again, the roadmap. Climate change is one roadmap to control. Pandemic treaty, another roadmap to control. The third roadmap to control is quote unquote hate speech, right? Protecting you in exchange for your giving away certain freedoms. But Canada's taken it to a brand new level. So on February 21st, the Prime Minister announced this decision to introduce the Online Harms Act. Now, this was introduced, as so many often are, as a way to protect kids. Now, if you recall, several other sites or several other bills in the United States have been introduced to, quote unquote, protect kids, like CISPA, which all they did really was screw over, perfectly legal websites that adults would use. But we were told this is protecting children against sex trafficking. The last time I checked, sex trafficking is still very much up, and I think even higher than where it used to be before. All it did was sacrifice online models or online prostitution from being able to advertise their services and have intermediaries where they could actually check to see if people were who they were and kind of protect themselves a little bit. So the government removed those while also doing absolutely nothing to stop sex trafficking. So another high five for the government. And of course, this included a lot of intrusive measures into our personal lives. So the online harms bill is being said, well, this is going to protect minors and everything else and exploitation of children. What does it really do? Well, people who've read the bill, including a Canadian attorney named Dan Freiheit, and I'm taking this from Matt Tiabi's reporting, he says that it was a complete and total lie when this bill was put forth as very specifically focused on correcting child abuse, etc. So this social engineering project includes measures to enlist Canada's citizens in an ambitious social monitoring system with rewards, and listen to this fucking bullshit, rewards of up to $20,000 for anonymous informants of hateful behavior, with the guilty paying penalties of up to $50,000. You're incentivizing a population to report hate speech, and if someone is found guilty, they have to pay an exorbitant fine, which will then cover the fees that you're paying out to these rats that are trying to report their fellow citizens to the government. Cute. Next, extraordinary criminal penalties, including life in prison, not just for existing crimes like advocating genocide, but for any offense motivated by hatred. Offense motivated by hatred. That can cover literally anything. You could say that somebody, this we see this with any hate crime legislation. It's completely subjective, which is why it's complete fucking horseshit. Virtually anything could be traced back. Any crime committed, any slur, any post, a meme shared could be saying it's an offense motivated by hatred, right? Bank fraud, you could say, is an offense motivated by hatred. If you deny somebody a bank loan and they happen to be a minority or gay, it could be an offense motivated by hatred, couldn't it? Next, they have essentially what is pre-crime. If an informant convinces a judge that you will commit a hate offense, you can be jailed up to a year, put under house arrest, have firearms seized, or be forced into drug and alcohol testing. That is maybe the most psychotic thing of all. All you have to do is convince a judge, who, by the way, of course, these judges are going to be left-leaning, definitely 100% more in line to, or more inclined, because of the incentive structure, of course. If you're a judge that finds everybody innocent of these hate crimes, I doubt that you'll get much support. So the incentive structure all is into guilty. But you just have to convince a guy that this is something that somebody would do. Not that they have done. That they will commit a hate crime. Now, again, what is a hate crime? What's defined as a hate crime? Well, you're talking about hateful behavior. You're talking about memes in the case of many nations, including Canada. You're talking about memes. Is one of the things that was rejected up in Ireland recently. The meme police coming after you. And they can put you in every other program to control what you have, what you think. Again, this is not an effort to police real hate speech. This is an effort for control. They have a perfect excuse now. If they think you will do something wrong, they'll put you into drug programs, which means they get to control you, monitor you, test you. They can take away your firearms. Now you're less of a threat to the government if there needs be a rebellion, and it certainly seems like in Canada there might. You can be put under house arrest or jailed for a year. They can just toss you in the cell. Hateful. The hateful wing. It's probably the happiest place on earth, the hateful wing of a Canadian prison. God, what a fun place to be. When I die, take me to the hateful wing, God. They could also penalize you, not just for pre-crime, but for previous crime. Stuff that you posted earlier, stuff that you said earlier. The law, because it was introduced in 2024, does not mean that you, from now on, can't do anything. No. The free speech that was legal before, they can come after you for. That's unprecedented. In any law, in the history of law, that's unprecedented. I mean, for fuck's sake, people used to marry 12-year-olds in this country that are still alive today because you can't marry and bang a 12-year-old now. We didn't go after all those people. Be insane. Even for something as horrible as pedophilia, it would be insane. Canada says, no, we're all in. And finally, force corporate internet platforms to remove hateful content virtually on demand within 24 hours, with a hammer being a fine of up to 6% of their gross global revenue. AKA, hey, Twitter, we're going to try to bend you to the will and make you our bitch, similar to Australia. This is a level of psychotic, controlling, as you said, dictator, authoritarian behavior, unlike anything we've seen outside of China, right? China's got similar measures put into place. We all know that. They use VPNs to go around it. They use private networking to go around it, but it still exists. Canada is going to have a very popular VPN pretty soon. Canada's in line, and this is after, by the way, of course, never forget that the judge in Canada, one of these, whatever their Supreme Court judges are called, had ruled that taking away people's bank accounts was perfectly justified during the trucker protests. Now, they later walked that back, but the damage has already been done. And they followed that up with even more psychotic behavior around quote-unquote hate speech. Every bill, I've said this before, I tweeted this out on, I think, Libertarian page. Every bill that the government puts forth, no matter what it's called, no matter what its named, no matter what they tell you it's for, every fucking bill is a Trojan horse for something far, far worse. You're seeing it here. You're seeing it in every single bill that's passed our state house, that's been signed into law by Biden. Every single bill is a Trojan horse for something far, far worse. Now, will people in Canada revolt? Do they have the nuts to do it? Will it get vetoed at the end of the day because Trudeau's under pressure? I just don't know. But this is not an outlier. As mentioned, this is in line with the Australian Communications and Media Authority Act, Europe's Digital Service Act, Scotland's Hate Crime and Public Order Act. They're laying a blueprint, not a blue plan, Blue's Clues. They're laying a blueprint, and it's pretty obvious what the blueprint is. And it's to attack people's ability to communicate freely, to express outrage, to express distrust, to express reality outside of government control. We are in a battle for the definition of truth and reality. And they know that, especially in the era of social media, where you look at what's happening with Israel-Palestine, you look at what's happening with a lot of the conflicts going on, a lot of the realities, COVID, a perfect example. Social media was where the truth was heard, which is why they censored it. Social media is why Israel is badly losing the PR war, because people can see the effects of what their policies have been. Social media is the last vestige of our reality, which is funny because you'd think it would be the first place that we'd be suspicious of, but they painted us into a corner, essentially. So, fuck Canada. All right, let's go. Last thing, and we'll wrap it up here. I think I covered all my crap. Yeah. All right, last thing. This story is just too funny not to talk about. Especially we're talking about consenting adults. Now, the Olympics are coming up in Paris. I'm going. Me. This guy. I'm going to see if I can break some beds. But no, I'm going. Well, I'm bringing my wife. It's going to be tough to bang any Olympians with her there. But you know what? I'm going to give it the old college try. And speaking of my wife, I was just up north. I flew into Sacramento and spent some time in Vacaville. And my wife's family flew in. Shout out to Aunt Dawn. Hey, Dawn. Shout out to Donnie. Got to spend some time up there with them. And it's always fun because a lot of her family has really come around to libertarian philosophy and the way of thinking. And it was interesting just talking to another of their friends, not a family member insofar as a friend more, but he and I were talking at dinner, and it was funny. We were joking about how I, in one conversation, had both won him over to libertarianism and as an Eagles fan. And so I take a lot of pride in that. But he was expressing essentially the exact thing that I had told to Reason Magazine when they were pressing me on, why Donald Trump wants to speak at our convention. And I told him, of course, they're not going to take my word for it because Reason has a vendetta against the Libertarian Party right now. But I said, look, you've got the two parties voting in unison. And the way they vote is to fuck America. You've got a definitely extreme version of the DNC. You've got a extreme version of the GOP, which is extreme in some policy positions, right? Let's say abortion, certain things like, Roe versus Wade. And I'm talking extreme compared to the middle person, not maybe compared to me. But the people in the middle are going, what the fuck happened to these two? And as I mentioned before, surveys out there have shown that it's like 70% plus want a third party, a legitimate third party. And I'm talking to this guy, his name's Guy, and he's literally just saying that. He goes, I voted for Biden last time. He goes, I don't want to vote for Trump. I don't think the GIP is a good idea. The DNC's just abandoned us. They both vote like shit. They both, don't give a damn. Inflation's up the rule. And I said, yeah, man, Libertarian Party. This is what we're doing. This is, there has to be a third option. We're it. And we are presenting a different alternative. The Libertarian Party as is right now, it's not going to be a milquetoast version that these fucking, classic liberal caucus dorks want. It has to be different. It has to be a true check on what's been happening in the country. But at the same time, it's got to be an inspirational message of how to move things forward. But I'm telling you, there's a larger component of the country right now open to libertarian thinking, open to libertarian philosophy, open to the party than has ever existed before. It's not going to matter this cycle. All that matters this cycle is introducing people to the concepts and taking advantage of the opportunities, which is why, despite some, caterwauling from the very, very insular and myopically focused members of the party about having Donald Trump speak, about having Vivek debate, about having RFK Jr. come, the idea here is we're not going to win this cycle regardless, right? And it takes time, but similar to a Ron Paul moment, we have a captured audience who is actively looking for an alternative. So you need to get as many eyes on us now. So when 4 years from now, when shit's even shittier, when the bird flu has us all eating ramen noodles again, locked in our houses, that people go, this is the way. It's time to make a change, and the change is now. We need to build momentum, and that momentum has already started. It's just getting branding, getting name identification out there. Okay, let's finish up with these fucking beds in Paris. So this story just broke, New York Post. It's well known. Olympians, good-looking people, fit bods, right? You're the height of your powers. Sexually, you're attractive. You got enough an ounce of fat on your body. You're ready to bone. And you're surrounded by other athletes that are there ready to bone, right? And there's all these reports of orgies coming out of the Olympic Village. They famously had bowls of condoms sitting around there. I think I might have joked about this in another episode. But they now in Paris, the fucking French of all people, the French they're known for being promiscuous and having mistresses all over the town. I mean, Pepe Le Pew was a rapist, for fuck's sake. I know we invented him, but based off a very accurate stereotype. The fucking French design beds that don't have support under your elbows and your knees to try to stop people from fucking. They want to make them so uncomfortable that you can't bang in these beds to avoid Olympians having sex. Now, number one, why is it any of your business if Olympians decide that they want to have sex? Why is it the IOC's purview or the Paris Olympic committee's purview to decide they don't want people having sex at the Olympics? These are adults. They're consenting. They want to do what they want to do. They're going to do it. And I hate to tell you, putting beds in there that are going to break isn't going to stop them. You're just going to get cum-covered couches and cum-covered, sinks. It's not going to stop anybody. You're going to bang up against the window. Get some nice titty prints on there, like the portal. It's not going to stop anybody. But the fact that these people think that they have the authority to try to adjust human behavior, talk about an indicator, right? Talk about, guess who learned a lesson from the WHO? Well, clearly the IOC did, didn't they? And let's condition people. Let's make sure that they do the right thing because we know what's best for them. Fuck off. Oh my God. I can't wait for those athletes to bang double. I'm looking forward to human innovation of figuring out ways to Rubik's Cube several beds together with their little cutouts into one giant Tetris orgy machine where people are just fucking from on top and fucking from down low. Their bodies in different positions, Kama Sutra style. It's an Ouroboros. Nobody knows where the pole vaulter ends and the sprinter begins. That guy's doing the hurdles over 2 different dicks. I mean, I can't wait. Because I believe in humanity and humanity's ability to overcome. And speaking of cum, I also can't wait. And I joked about this with John Odermatt on Twitter earlier. I can't wait for one of the lead competitors in whatever sport to pull out of an event because he got hurt pulling out. And I'll leave you with that for this episode. Guys, please do not forget, subscribe. Leave us a comment on Stitcher, on Apple. We haven't had comments about this show in forever on Apple. It does help boost that algorithm, guys. Please comment. Follow us on Twitter at Lions of Liberty. I'm at Brian McWilliams. Follow me. Tweet at me. Please subscribe to the show on YouTube. Hit the notifications button because we're shadow banned to shit. And of course, as I mentioned, join us in our Pride where we do our special bonus shows. And we'll also have our special now Telegram channel. All right, that's it. For me, Brian McWilliams from the Lions of Liberty Network and from Mean Age Daydream, keep those electric eyes on me, babe. And keep that ray gun to my head. I included it for you, Aunt Dawn. There you go.